What's up, everyone? It's Bruce Waha. Hope y'all having a good day. In today's episode of Wingman Wednesdays, The Exchange, we're going to be talking about a serious subject matter, which is veteran suicide. We'll be touching base with one of my wingmen, who is Chuck Metz, who is a mental health technician. Let's see, did it go? Okay, cool.
Yeah, it says
All right, fantastic. Everyone, I got my buddy here, Chuck. He is a mental health technician. Is that correct?
yeah, that's right.
Mental health technician. He was also the boss at my airman leadership school. He was a great leader. We all fell in line under this guy because of his tremendous leadership. So without further ado, Chuck, go ahead and take it away, man.
All right, man. Hey, appreciate you having me on board. And this is a great topic that you're bringing up. So definitely appreciate the time that you've been putting into this. Hopefully, we can have some really good discussion on the topic and basically just kind of create a pathway for other people to have these like similar discussions. There's a couple things that you touched on early on in your video that I just wanted to highlight. The first thing was seeking help before it gets too bad, and that's huge, man. The way I like to equate mental health is similar to your physical health. So if you were to have a cut on your arm, more than likely you're going to treat that wound, you're going to put some antibiotics on it, you're not going to let it fester, get infected and get worse. It needs to be the same mindset with your mental health. You know, if you got some stuff going on and it's having an impact on your day-to-day routines, operations, your family, your work, it's best to seek help sooner than later because you never know what's on the horizon. If you suppress whatever's going on, and let's say a week or two later something else happens, now you have to not only deal with what's going on at that point in time, but you got all that baggage that you suppressed down as well. And that's where a lot of people get in trouble. The mindset of, oh, I can get to it later, or yeah, it sucks right now, but you know, I'm about to PCS soon, or I'm about to go on vacation, so things will get better. Hopefully things do get better, but that's not always the case. So it's definitely safer, and it's definitely better to address things while they're at a lower level, before it gets out of control or gets to a point to where you are thinking about suicide, things of that nature.
Yeah,
Um,
you're absolutely right. One of the things that people do, and God knows that I've had the habit of doing, is that, you know what, it'll get better when I get to my next station. You know, it'll do this, it'll do that. Well, people are only accounting for, I include myself in that group because I'm guilty of it as well. People only account for the problems that they know, the problems that they're familiar with. When you get to a new location, all of that changes. They're like, there's no um, any PCS that happens without a great deal of stress coming along with it. You know, people don't talk about, oh, out processing was so easy, in processing was so easy. Like, it's never easy. God
right.
knows it's never freaking easy, even though we all say it should totally be easy. But, exactly what you're talking about. A lot of people suffer through that. A lot of people just have that mentality of saying that, hey, you know what, let me just deal with it when I get to this spot and then I can re-engage with it and have a fresh start. It's a naive state of mind. I think it's naive to go into that, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Another way to look at it too is deployments. So where a lot of people get in trouble is they're like, man, I'm gonna be going back home. Everything's gonna be good. I'm gonna see my family. And while all that is great, any major change in your routine can be very stressful. So when I was at the deployment transition center on Ramstein, that's something that we had conversations with the people, with deployers who were going back home, just talking about that transition. Like, yeah, mentally seeing family, going back stateside, it should be good, and it is a good thing. However, you're going from high tempo deployment operations, probably less responsibilities than what you had back home. If you had a defect, you ain't got to worry about grocery shopping, no kids, no family, no additional responsibilities like that. But when you get back home, all that swarms back. And you got potential new work centers, new people you're working with. Your family has lived and worked without you for 6 to 12 months, so they may have new routines. So yeah, like you were just talking about with PCSs, any change in pace, it's best to address it at that moment in time and not push forward. Another thing that you hit on too was surrounding yourself with positive and motivating individuals. That is huge, huge. It's not to say that you can't be around negative people, but if you have goals and aspirations, you definitely want to surround yourself with people who are going to push you towards those goals, who are going to be in line with what your values are, who are going to be there to support you, push you, make you go forward, things of that nature. If you are constantly surrounding yourself with people with different values or people are going to bring you down, it's going to be really hard for you to press forward. With that comes self-care. So you have to be able to take care of yourself. And part of taking care of yourself is not trying to make everyone but yourself happy. You definitely want to be there for other people. Don't get me wrong. You want to help people out, but you can't forget to take care of yourself. And this is where a lot of leaders fall deep into a hole. They get so focused, so hyper focused on I gotta take care of my people, I gotta take care of my people, I gotta take care of my people. And they get to a point to where they're not eating lunches, they're not taking their PT time, they're not taking vacation days. They get so focused on everyone else, they forget about themselves. And then before they know it, they get so immersed in stress that they can't take care of themselves. And because they can't take care of themselves, they can't take care of their other people. So that's something I hit with airmen and leaders, especially like NCOs and senior NCOs and officers, is in order to take care of yourself or in order to take care of your people, you have to make time for yourself. You have to take care of you.
Yeah, that's one thing that's before this job that I hadn't really thought about, because right now I deal a lot with patient movement. And what we encounter a lot is a lot of mental health patients. I'm not going to talk about anybody in specifics, but just kind of like a generalization. A lot of the people that do end up coming from being moved because of that is because they've never either experienced this. So that means that they're new to the whole military lifestyle. A lot of E1s, E2s, E3s, and then some of the like top mid-tier leadership, like the O4s, the O3s, some O5s, stuff like that. Those people are most guilty of putting everyone ahead of themselves to the point that they themselves in the end break. And you see that. And the problem, and I feel real bad for the officers because I hadn't ever really thought about it until I started seeing it more and more often, is that they don't want to self-identify. They don't want to come out. So they just keep compounding and compounding and compounding and adding stuff, because if they self-report, then they potentially lose a promotion. That isn't something that I knew. I don't know how much accurate that is. Again, that's just for me looking from the outside in, but a lot of people worry about that, and a lot of that's part of the conversation for a lot of people, I think, on the O side, is because if I guess the thought process is like, okay, well, they were in the deployed environment and they couldn't handle that. Why would we give them a promotion and move them to this plate where they're in charge of more people? And I'm not saying that's the case, but from the outside looking in, that looks like that's the case. So I feel really bad for them because oftentimes the leadership let themselves get come like bombarded and buried under the stresses of the mission and the stresses of their own people, and they ignore their own, that they ultimately end up breaking and being worse off than they would have been if they just self-reported or seeked help in the beginning.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And what a lot of people don't realize is seeking help and being seen in mental health in of itself does not have an automatic direct impact on promotion and careers. Oftentimes where you see the direct impact on that is if you've waited and waited and waited and your stuff gets to a point to where it is impacting your work, then yeah, there is going to be some impacts there. But just seeking help in of itself is not an automatic impact. Are there situations where being seen by mental health or seeking help can have an impact? Yeah, there are. I'm not going to BS you on here. There are situations, there are certain diagnoses, any fitness for duty questions or any questions regarding like reliability. Yeah, those can have career impacts, but it's not an automatic. And I think that's where the disconnect is if I get seen, there's going to be an automatic disqualification, an automatic impact.
Like people see it as being like an automatic thing where they're just like PSP or PRP, stuff like that.
Right.
Um, an automatic would be like, okay, we're going to take you out of your daily job to move you here to like a desk job so you can work on whatever you need to work on to get back to here. A lot of people kind of see that as like a almost like a demotion, but in reality, as like you didn't lose your certification, you didn't lose this, you didn't lose that. They just moved you to a different area where you can, kind of work on yourself and bounce back and get back to that area. Um, Unfortunately, for people that are less have less years in and less of an understanding of how the military works, they're like, oh, they moved me here, I was demoted. No, bro, you weren't demoted. It's just they're giving you space to get back on your feet properly so you can go back and do your job.
Absolutely.
So when people say it was an immediate thing, it's not. It looks like an immediate thing, but ultimately it has, just like you said, no impact on your career whatsoever. Again, if you let it, you know, compound and just keep it inside to the point where your leadership has to step in, that it is affecting your job, it is affecting your ability to do your job, then yeah, that's when it becomes a thing. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the exchange here on Wingman Wednesday. Just a quick reminder, if you hadn't subscribed to the channel, be sure to do so and like this video. Without further ado, back to the exchange. You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah. Another thing you hit on too earlier in conversation was having good coping, having good outlets, both socially and physically. I know you had mentioned, being part of groups, being part of social groups, especially like the physical fitness groups, things of that nature. That's huge. Being involved, being incorporated socially, being involved, being incorporated physically, all that helps your mental health. You had lightly touched on the four pillars, so the physical, social, spiritual, and mental pillars, and how all four of those are important. I like to equate it like a table. Like if you look at a table with four legs, if one of those legs is taken out, there's going to be an imbalance there.
Mm-hmm.
If too much weight or too much stress gets put on that one section that's lacking in your life, then it can fall over. It's the same thing. Same thing in our personal lives. You really have to key in on your social well-being, your mental well-being, your physical well-being, and your spiritual well-being. All those factors, all those pillars are huge. Now, depending on who you are individually, some may be more important to you than others, and that's fine. We're all unique individuals. It doesn't need to be even spread. For me personally, physical and social are my biggest ones, because social for me encompasses my family. Physical just keeps me in good shape and everything, so I'm feeling good, in good health and everything. So those are kind of my top two, and then spiritual and mental are still important, but we all have our different pillars that we value, as long as they're at least incorporated in our life at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as far as like the coping, just finding what works for you. There's not a correct way to deal with stress or anxiety from a positive standpoint. So whether that's going for a run or listening to music or journaling or talking to someone or watching Netflix, watching anything productive, all those are good to go, whatever works for you. What you don't want to do is what we call negative coping, and that's like using alcohol or drugs to quote unquote cope or deal with what's going on, because you're not actually dealing with what's going on. You're suppressing those emotions down, and you're still gonna have to deal with those at some point. So anything that you do that it adds a positive benefit to yourself, that's positive coping. And so whatever that looks like for you, do what works for you. What works for me may not work for you. But the big thing is just staying away from that negative coping, not surrounding yourself with negative individuals, and not using substances to deal with what's going on internally.
I get you. Yeah, that's definitely a common thing for people. A lot of those things that they're meant to kind of just take the edge off, but end up becoming a crutch in the end.
Right.
Uh, Shoot, Lord knows that. I mean, just switching up your schedule, um, just switching up your schedule to a point that you're not used to it. People use can use alcohol to be part of a coping method with the change in lifestyle. One thing that I've had a conversation with a lot of people that back in the day we used to drink heavily and go party heavily. We ask each other like, how do we do that? We're like, man, well, we had less responsibilities, less things to do. Now I drink more coffee than anything because I have to keep myself up high, because if especially, you know this, and every military member knows this. In the military, you learn to fall asleep anywhere at any time. So you just make yourself comfortable. You'll knock right out. You'll go to sleep. So any kind of downer like alcohol, if I stop moving, and Lord knows if I've had alcohol, I'll go straight to sleep. Because I'm just that tired of everything. And like we all have things to do. So the majority of the time, I was like, I'll be drinking coffee to keep myself up high. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I need to remember that whenever I keep myself motivated and being productive, that I have to take time for myself. So that it's all about, just like you were saying earlier, is balance. You can't keep yourself too high because then you can't concentrate on yourself, and you can't allow yourself to be so low that it becomes depression
Yeah.
or stuff like that.
Yeah. And, with the alcohol conversation, so alcohol by itself is not always like a negative thing. It's on how you use it. So drinking every now and then, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with alcohol consumption as long as you do it in a responsible manner. And like you said, you're not using it as a crutch.
This
So
is a monster. So
no worries. Hey, you're doing it in a social scene. You're not using it as a crutch, so we're good to go. No, but yeah, in all seriousness, like in the mental health career field, that's something that we preach, especially on the ADAP side. Is alcohol in itself isn't a bad thing. It's how you use it. So if you're using it to deal and cope, then yeah, it is negative. What alcohol does is it exacerbates whatever emotions that you're feeling.
Mhm.
So if you're feeling sad or depressed, alcohol can amplify those feelings. If you're upset, it can amplify those feelings. If you're happy, it can amplify those feelings. So depending on how you're using it and the quantity in which you're consuming it can have huge impacts down the road. From a statistical standpoint, too, 20% of suicides um, involve in the individual having alcohol in their system. So it's not saying that alcohol causes suicide, but it can be a contributing factor if you're already kind of in a dark place.
Mhm.
So if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling overwhelmed, the last thing you want to do is start downing alcohol because it can amplify those emotions and get you to a point to where you're thinking about suicide.
Yeah, one of the things that people often forget, and it's always in the forefront of my mind because I was actually directly affected and called out by it, was back when I was a civilian. I was a bartender, so I knew the aspects of alcohol. Alcoholics would come in and be like, okay, I can't serve that guy because he's clearly drunk. The my coworker over here is intoxicated. That I can like, yo, you're just hindering business right now. You need to go home. So whenever, at work, people would see me and I would see them and I'd be like, okay, you know what? These people are good. This person's good. This person's good. That person over there, they're just tired.
Right.
Like they're not drunk. They're just tired. And so it was easy for me to see that. And at one point, people thought that I was put into a position which I was not prepared for. I did not have the adequate, I had the bare minimum of training to take over for that spot because, we were lacking personnel. So I was moved into there and I just wasn't ready for it. I really wasn't. I got the mission done. I took care of it, but I sacrificed in my personal life. I sacrificed in my personal goals, my family life, and more than anything, my sleep. So I was getting so little sleep and under so much stress that people would think that my leadership thought that I had been drinking. I'm like, no, I haven't drank in like months
Right.
because I'm here. But they would think that I would had been drinking because I was tired. And what people don't understand, and it's easy to forget, is the aspects and the characteristics of someone that is drunk is almost identical to someone that has had a serious lack of sleep. So I mean the two are comparable very easily. So if you see someone that's okay, they drink a lot, you could do that. Or other people that, what, they don't sleep enough. It's the same thing, and a lot of people don't understand that. Just like, oh yeah, well, I don't drink. Well, okay, great. You don't drink. You don't have that coping, mechanism. It's not a negative impact on your life, but how much sleep are you getting? Are you getting the right amount of sleep? And I mean, that for the most part, is really easy to see and really, really quick to just nip in the butt. You know, if your airmen or your leaders or someone isn't getting enough sleep, you know, remind them. I mean, it sounds like a dumb thing, but just to remind them is just like, hey man, go home, get some rest. You know, don't go out this weekend. You know, get some sleep. You know, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, man, absolutely. Sleep is huge, and I'm glad you hit on that because, real talk, the majority of people that come in mental health, no matter what it's for, whether it's stress, anxiety, depression, adjustment, or even on the ADAP side, alcohol use, one of the most common symptoms or one of the most common effects that they're also going through is severe lack in sleep. Almost, I'd say a high percentage of patients that are being seen in mental health are suffering either from lack of sleep or restless sleep, not being able to fall asleep, stay asleep, racing thoughts. So they're constantly waking up throughout the night. So yeah, sleep is huge. Lack of sleep can, again, amplify whatever it is you're going through. So if you're stressed, you're going to be more stressed. If you're angry, you're going to be more upset. It's something that I personally struggled with and had to remind myself. Yeah, I know you were laughing whenever you're talking about, sometimes you just got to remind someone to get some sleep. I had one of my coworkers the other day because I was letting him know. I was like, man, I'm just like physically drained, man. He goes, well, how much sleep are you getting? And I was like, been averaging like 4 to 5 hours. He's like, yeah, how about you get some sleep? I was like, you know what? That's not a bad idea. Got some sleep the next day and actually felt a lot better. Yeah, it's something that seems like common sense, but it's, for whatever reason, it's a lot harder to practice what we preach when it comes to sleep. But yeah, sleep is huge, man, for sure.
I agree. I definitely agree with that one.
Yeah. One of the things I did want to touch on too was just kind of going over some more recent stats with regards to suicide. On a DoD level, so all branches included, in fiscal year 2018, there was 325 active duty deaths by suicide, 81 reserve deaths by suicide, and 135 National Guard deaths by suicide. The guard percentage is huge because that equates to 30%. So while active duty has a higher number, the guard numbers actually have a larger percentage. And a lot of people kind of forget about the reserve and guard units because they think, they call them weekend warriors. We all joke around, things of that nature, give each other a hard time. But they go through some stress as well, just because they're not full-time active duty. I mean, they're balancing two lifestyles. They're balancing civilian lifestyle and military lifestyle. And in some cases, that can be even more stressful. So it's definitely important to not forget about them because, like I said, from a percentage standpoint, they're actually more at risk of suicide when you look at the percentages. And again, that's across the board, all four branches. Also, age is huge. So if you're between the ages of 20 and 29, that accounted for 79.8% of the deaths by suicide in 2018. So again, age range 20 to 29. I know we focus on, leaders and NCOs and senior NCOs and the amount of responsibility they have, but we definitely got to look out for the younger airmen. And again, up until that age 30 time frame. When it comes to, adjustment to military life, like you touched on, first coming to the military, if you've never been exposed to the military, that can be huge stressors. As you make NCO ranks, that's usually, mid 20s, late 20s. That's an adjustment. Now you're leading people, you're supervising. And in some case, going into that senior NCO tier, just different levels of responsibility. And then on the officer side as well, usually hit captain, major, mid, late 20s, early 30s. Again, huge changes in responsibilities. So as far as like age range, definitely a huge focal point, 79.8%.
So just a question. Do you feel, and this is just kind of going off the path real quick, do you feel that the personnel, the officers that come in from the academy, which I've known officers that came from the academy or from JROTC, the ones that come from the academy, you can tell they come from the academy pretty quick and pretty easy. But they got their stuff squared away to the point that you're just like, okay, they are really good at thinking technically, tactically. The ones that I have an experience with coming from JROTC, they're a little bit more really, they want more cohesion within the unit. And then the OE officers, from it's been my experience, and you can let me know in your experience, the OE officers often come in with a um, stronger stronger mental state going into a super stressful environment than some of the other ones. Now, I'm not saying that's the case for all of them. Absolutely not. I've met some really amazing officers on all spectrums, and I've met some not so much on all spectrums. But do you think that the mental state of the OE officers coming in is a little bit more tempered than some of the other ones?
So, in my opinion, I think having that breadth of experience prior to becoming an officer, it definitely helps.
Mm-hmm.
Because you said they're more apt and more aware, and they have kind of a past history dealing with certain situations. However, on the flip side, it also does come down to just individuals themselves. Like
Mm-hmm.
you were talking about, some people can come straight in and be squared up and good to go. So there is an individual factor that comes into play, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
an so yeah, based off experience, it definitely helps to kind of have that experience underneath your belt and dealing with those situations. And then just as individuals, individuals themselves, there are some prior enlisted that individually can't handle stress, and that
Mm-hmm.
continues to become an officer. And then vice versa, there are some brand new officers that are 100% good to go, can deal with it. There are some brand new officers and enlisted that come in that don't have a lot of experience in dealing with stressors, so it's a bit of an
Mm-hmm.
adjustment. So yeah, I think it's a healthy mix between individuals, and where they're coming from and what they've experienced, and
Mm-hmm.
general experience in the military.
Yeah, I like that you said it's a healthy mix because from my experience being under the leadership of certain kinds of officers, they're always the one that are in the front of the ruck march or in
Right.
front of the 5K that everybody's running. It's those people that have like a very healthy lifestyle already that are much more acclimated to being able to be in that leadership position. And because fitness is such a high thing, it should be a high priority for all military members, that the people that have a much more fitness driven life, I feel like personally that they do a lot better being able to deal with these situations, with these stressors, because they have that automatic outlet. I know for a fact that anytime that my fitness has gone down, my stress level always goes up. And I mean, just depending on what your job is, you especially now with COVID, gym life isn't as easily accessible as it used to be. So a lot of people, myself included, are just opting to get home gyms because being able to fit that into your schedule is a lot more difficult than it used to be.
Yeah, and while you're on the subject of COVID, that is an additional stressor that a lot of people are
Mm-hmm.
dealing with now, and it's something to be aware of too. So we've had recent discussions with leadership here on base, just about some of the stressors that people are dealing with regards to COVID specifically. And there's a lot. And it's not just, a lot of people focus on the families. So the people with families and the kids and all the
Mm-hmm.
stressors that, and yeah, they do have a lot of stressors, but we can't forget about the single airmen either, and the single soldiers and DoD personnel. They're just as much at risk as the ones with families. So from an isolation standpoint, singles are actually more at risk.
Mm-hmm.
They're more isolated. They have less support. On the family side, having to deal with the school situation of the kids, that's a huge stressor. There are some kids that are having to do homeschooling, which is an additional stressor on the parents. So parents who have never taught are having to
Mm-hmm.
teach classes. My wife's included in that. Our twins started preschool this year, and she's homeschooling them because it was either them attend classes virtually,
Mm-hmm.
and real talk, my kids are not going to be able to stare at a computer screen for 8 hours. That's not happening. But now she's having to homeschool, and that's, she never taught in her life, so she's having to like learn that, and adjust to that. And then for the kids too, it's stressful on them. They're, especially for the kids who have had in school social experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're sitting at a computer screen, A lot of kids are like suffering with that. They want that social interaction. So you see a lot of kids struggling with that in that regard. And then even the kids that are able to go to school is a different dynamic now.
Hmm.
Different rules, different situations. So there's a lot of adjustments on different levels. Also, change in routines. So we talk about routines. COVID has thrown a wrench in everyone's day-to-day routines. What you were doing before is not what you're doing now, and
Hmm.
that it can have a huge impact. One of the things that we're seeing most often is with COVID, families are spending a lot more time together. Now, initially, you would think, oh, that's a great thing. You get more time with your kids, more time with your spouse. That should be a good thing, right?
Hmm.
In actuality, it's a change of pace and it can be very stressful. If you're not used to seeing your kids all day, every day, that can be stressful. And then with that, not only are you stressed out, now you're feeling guilty that you're stressed about spending more time with your kids and your spouse because you're like, shouldn't I be happy? Shouldn't I be like,
Yeah.
shouldn't we be bonding? Shouldn't this be friends? And you're like, why do I feel mad? Why am I more irritated? I'm spending more. So now you got guilt thrown in there on top of stress. It's just things that people don't think about, and it's something you got to put in the forefront of your mind. Just having general conversations with people at work, like, "Hey, how are you doing?"
Hmm.
And really finding out, where your airmen are, where your DoD personnel are. How's their family, how's their personal life. Really asking those questions,
Hmm.
because, like I said, the guilt, the stress, the single life, the married life, the kids. There's a plethora of stressors that we're dealing with now that we haven't been used to in the past.
Yeah, one of the things that all of that reminds me of is back when it was more so when I was a civilian. Whenever you would have for the holidays and for Thanksgiving specifically, all the family would come together. You'd all have that lunch, that family lunch or that family dinner. But at some point, it was time to go somewhere else. Like you're like, okay, I've had enough family time for now, and people don't have that option anymore. So people that aren't directly impacted by that or are having a hard time understanding, it's just like, okay, you're now forced to be in a situation where it used to be kind of an optional thing.
Yeah.
And like you were talking about earlier, just like just checking on your people, seeing how they're doing. One of my favorite things to do is whenever someone asks me a question, is to respond accurately. So
Mhm.
people just like, oh, hey, how are you doing? I was like, I am having a terrible day. But you know what? And it's funny because you'll get two responses. One is oh wow, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. The genuine response, and then there's the other one that just completely bypasses everything that you just said. They're just like, oh great, blah 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 blah, and just leads right into it. I'm just like, if you're
Right.
not going to be sincere in asking me this question, then don't ask me this question, please.
Right.
I already don't like to be on the phone. I'm not really on the phone kind of person. I'm more of
Right.
a like in person kind of person. But it's just really funny to hear the reactions or even so much see the reaction. It kind of jolts them mentally, being like, okay, hey, oh, this is a real person that I'm talking to. It's not an automated machine. It's not this. It's not that. It's a real person. So
Absolutely.
keeping in mind whenever you ask people these questions, like don't just ask these questions. You know, if you're going to ask this question, be prepared to have potentially 5 minutes of your
Yeah.
time actually finding out what this person's going through. If you
Absolutely.
see if you see this person is like tired or they're stressed out or something like that, and you got time and the finances, um, why not go get them a cup of coffee? Come back, be like, hey man, I saw you needed this. Here you go. Here's a monster. Here's a cup of coffee. Here's some tea. Here's some whatever. That was something that I always loved doing whenever I was part of the clinic. In the clinic life, would be
Mhm.
going around seeing the other 4As and seeing like, hey, how you doing? You doing all right? Oh, hey, you look like you needed a monster. Hey, this and this and that. And, if you can fit it in, I definitely encourage it.
Yeah.
So again, one of the things to remind people that are watching is just like, if you ask these questions, and we all ask these questions every day, you get asked that question right at the gate. Hey, how's your day going? When
Right.
security force is checking your ID, I'm just like, oh, I'm doing okay. I'm doing well. How are you? I was like, I have one of my favorite things to do, and they don't really let you do it anymore, was on weekends. I would drive in, especially in the middle of Texas, where it's stupid hot in the middle of August. You have the security forces hut. They're like, "Hey, it's okay. We're having a good day." Blah blah blah. go to the BX or go to the shop at, buy them 2 Arizona teas, go back out the gate, come back in, be like, here you go. How many of y'all in the hut? 2 y'all? Here's 2 teas, man. You guys take it easy. And it improves people's like mentality, it improves people's morale,
Mhm.
and it makes you feel good because you're looking out for other people as well. So, if you guys are asking how's someone doing, don't be just asking, like be legit in what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, genuineness is a huge. And based off the report, so last year in 2019, when they did the resiliency tactical pause, they elicited feedback on it was like 11,000 people on things that they wanted to see with regards to like resilience, suicide awareness being coupled in that. And one of the main responses that people had was leadership trust and showing that they care. And I emphasize showing because it's one thing to say, "Hey, we care about you," and it's another thing to actually show it. It's the same thing with I love using the open door policy term. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people want to preach. I got an open door policy. Come in anytime you want.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people don't actually mean that. So when you
Mm-hmm.
go into that open door situation and then you get shut down, oh, I'm too busy right now. What happened to the open door
Mm-hmm.
policy? You know what I'm
My
saying?
open door is to my secretary's office.
Yeah,
So
open door is closed at the moment. So there's a difference between when you say you have an open door policy. Just I mean, there's a difference between setting boundaries and then just
Mhm,
blowing smoke. Blowing smoke is saying it and not meaning it. Setting
mhm,
boundaries would be like, hey, you know, I do have meetings on these days, or I have certain hours where I'm going to be out, but anytime between those,
mhm,
I'm here. You let me know you need to talk, and I'll make the time. So there's a difference between that. So the people who say, well, I have an open door policy, but I get busy sometimes. Then set those boundaries. Let them know, what days and times you're
mhm,
going to be out, whatever. And then if you're at your office, just be able to make those times, be able to recognize when someone actually needs to talk. And then in what you were saying beforehand, be ready for those responses too. So if someone says, yeah, I'm not feeling good, react accordingly. Don't be like, oh, damn. Or oh, yeah, well, hey, you have a good weekend. No, I mean, respond genuine, show some
mhm,
empathy. Be like, man, I'm very sorry to hear that. What's going on?
mhm,
Just general responses like that can go a huge way. Having a simple response like that is going to make them want to come to you again in the future. If you
mhm,
shut them down, they may suppress that in the future
mhm,
because they're going to be like, they're not going to take me seriously or they don't actually care. So just again, showing empathy, being genuine in responses, especially when it comes to suicide. If someone says that they're suicidal, be ready for that.
mhm,
Just react accordingly. So ask the clarifying questions. Okay, especially if they're in person. A, don't leave them alone. Stay
mhm,
there with them, of course. But just ask. How are you doing? What happened? What are some of the thoughts you're having? Have you made any attempts? Just asking very direct, general questions. You don't want to react like, oh my gosh, because if you freak out, they may shut down and play it off. They'd be like, oh no,
mhm,
I was just kidding. I'm good. I'm good.
mhm.
So don't react in such a way where they might shut off. Again, just show some general empathy, show that you care and you understand, and then and press from there.
Yeah, being able to, I mean, the military is we're very much guilty of having dark senses of humor.
Right.
I think in your career field, along with a lot of career fields and my career field especially, there's a lot of plays with that line that's there. But one thing to keep in mind is just it's definitely that when there's a time, like when there's just like there's a time and a place for jokes, and whenever you encounter a situation, it's very easily you can identify, okay, this is he's just kind of having a hard time right now. I can help him out. I can make a joke here. Or other
Right.
times it's like this person's very serious. They're having a very difficult time in whatever stage of life that they're going through. I need to be um, a wingman to this person right now. Don't time for jokes. I mean, if you have that relationship with them, I mean, that's great. But even then, people know when to joke. People don't know when to joke. And if you're having a hard time identifying um, a place where you can, well, then you probably don't have that relationship with that person as much as you thought you did.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
it's definitely one of those situations where, you know what, this doesn't feel like a joking time. but it's simply awkward, and it may be awkward. That's just what it is, because you're dealing with a person at their most raw potentially, and dealing with anybody in a very raw state is awkward. There's no normalcy to it whatsoever.
Yeah. Another thing that came out in that report too that a lot of people want to see is kind of destigmatizing reaching out for help and destigmatizing when it comes to mental health and being seen there. One of the best ways to do that is as leaders, support people who want to seek help and don't downplay seeking help. If you're the type of individual that isn't going to seek help and you want to deal with things on your own, that's fine. But make sure you don't downplay anyone else who actually wants to seek help. So avoid terms like, oh, well, you just need to suck it up sometimes and press, because not everyone can suck it up and press. Some people can, and if that works for you, cool, awesome. But that's not how it works for everyone. Just be able to individualize your leadership towards specific people. You can hold everyone to the same standards and expectations, everything like that. But when it comes to leading, mentoring, when it comes to taking care of your people, you really have to individualize it to the actual person themselves. What stresses me out may not stress someone else out. What may be traumatic for me may not be traumatic for someone else. There's nothing right or wrong about that. That's just who we are as individuals. And as leaders, as airmen, as wingmen, we need to be able to identify that and just realize that we're all different individuals and that we may handle or deal with things in different ways. Another thing, too, with destigmatizing, one of the best ways to do this is if you have questions about what services are available or how being seen may impact your job, or if you feel like you have some people in your work section that have questions like that, reach out to mental health or reach out to any of the helping agencies and have them come out and talk to your section. Here recently, here at my base here on Bowling in DC, one of the flights in our squadron said, hey, can y'all come out next week and just hit on some stress management stuff? So yeah, we're going to go out to their section and we're going to have like 10-15 minute discussion on relaxation techniques and stress management. We had another unit that said, hey, can you come out and talk about, impacts on security clearances, what that looks like and just services that are offered. So we do that. We make that happen. So if there are questions that you have or questions that you think your section, reach out, ask for them to come out. Just ask those questions. We're willing and able to come out and, do small briefings like that or small discussions or just kind of give you that information up front.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the exchange here on Wingman Wednesday. Just a quick reminder, if you hadn't subscribed to the channel, be sure to do so and like this video. Without further ado, back to the exchange. That's great. I've seen a lot of units take advantage of that, and I encourage a lot of units to primarily go to mental health and seek the best program and talking points. I've seen units try and do it in-house, and I don't think it's as successful as they think it's going to be once it's done. I applaud you for trying. I applaud you for doing something about it and keeping your people in mind. But, my advice to individuals that are thinking about doing stuff like that for their unit or within their unit is to visit mental health and find out, okay, these are the places that we need to talk to. Just like you said, bring them out and have them lead it, because y'all have more experience talking on these subject matters and bringing people out of their shell to talk about these things, because people actively don't want to do that. They don't want to out themselves. Out themselves is a bad way to say it. People don't want to speak on something that they're uncomfortable speaking about to people that they care about, as in their family, let alone people that they have no direct connection outside of work. I've often told that to other people, well, why don't you just say something? I'm like, this is a conversation to be had with the people that I care about and people that I love, not to be, talking to strangers. So people that feel like commenting on all kinds of Facebook posts and everything like that, reserve that energy for a conversation that matters, not, John Smith or Joe Blow or whomever is out there just, trolling away on the comment section. Just if something impacts you, if something touches your heart, if something pulls on a string, if something sticks you, that it stays in the forefront of your mind, have that conversation with your family, have a conversation with people you trust, and, talk it through. There are a lot of things with, especially becoming an NCO, that you have to deal with that you never thought you would have to deal with before. There are conversations that you never thought you would have. So definitely, I mean, going around talking to everyone is not ideal. Talking to people you trust is ideal. Talking to mental health, um, just to check yourself, because that's the problem that I have talking to like family members and friends, was this: there is a bias that comes with it. Um, not It could be good, could be bad, but if you're going to a mental health or going to a therapist or someone like that, there is often a very unbiased approach to your thoughts, an unbiased way of thinking, and um, that often goes further than many conversations that you're having with, I guess, your family and friends. Um, yeah, that was a bad transition thought back to you, but there you go.
No, you're good, man. You're good. But yeah, I mean, like I said, key point that you were hitting on, and I was hitting on, is just asking the questions, getting that information out there, and then as far as like helping resources, there's tons out there. There's not only is there mental health, there's the chaplains, there's first sergeants, there's supervisors, there's the Airman Family Readiness Center, there's the Military Family Readiness Center, there's MFLACs, Military Family Life Consultants. There's
Mhm.
Military One Source. A lot of people don't know that Military One Source has counseling services, financial services, plethora of resources. There's In Transition for those of you who are separating or getting out, transition to civilian life. There's BHOP, Behavioral Health Optimization Program, which is a separate entity of mental health, but it deals with lower level mental health stuff. Has set number of sessions. Some people like doing that because it's not a part of mental health, just from a stigma standpoint. So there's a lot out there. And sometimes it just takes you picking up the phone, asking someone in mental health, like you reached out to me and said, hey, can you, do this talking point with me and hit on this information? I was like, yeah, sure. Networking, hitting up people, or calling the clinic itself and just being like, hey, and I'm interested in some services. What can you tell me?
Mhm.
So it's as easy as just asking a question. And or if you see someone that may have those questions, just asking for them and giving them that information up front. So
Yeah, that's a tremendous amount. I mean, just being a medic, I knew of a variety of programs that offered, mental health related programs, but I didn't know, like, you just spit off a whole page to me that I was just like, okay, I know that one. I know that one. I didn't know that one, that one, that one, that one. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, apparently there's a lot more that I wasn't familiar with. And I encourage people to go and check that out. I mean, go in there for, if you're having, you know, I I'm married, so every time we go to a new location, we'll go and we'll visit the MFLAC. Um, if for anything, just to have that moment and conversation for things to just kind of come out. I call it uh, like marriage exercise or relationship exercise. It was just like, okay, you need to come in and just like you check check the oil on a vehicle, right? You come in, you check out the system, and like, hey, are there things that we need to address that we haven't addressed yet? And the first meeting always goes fine. No, there's nothing. There's a little stresses here and there. The second meeting, stuff starts to come up that may be bothering her, maybe bothering me, and so forth. I mean, going and getting these meetings in, it's not a bad thing. In fact, it's very vital in my opinion, especially during the PCS season, because Lord knows you're at your highest stress level before you leave, and then you're at a high stress level whenever you get there. So for people that are considering, maybe going that, or couples that are considering, maybe we should do that, I would recommend going and doing it. I've never come out of one of those meetings being like, okay, that was pointless.
yeah,
As long it is whatever you put into it. So if you put something into it, you'll get something out of it. Now, you guys might not talk to each other for the rest of that evening. That's definitely a possibility because that happens, but it ultimately will spark a conversation at home, and you guys will be able to deal with any situation or any matters that you aren't on the same page about. So
Yeah.
that's just my personal experience.
With relationships, I mean, so relationships, especially with COVID, it's a huge stressor, but relationships continue to be in the top tier of stressors, correlating with suicide, on top of work related stress,
Mm-hmm.
as well as financial troubles. But with relationships, a lot of people forget about the family advocacy program. So when you first hear family advocacy program, a lot of people think, domestic violence or domestic disputes or abuse. When
Mm-hmm.
in actuality, the majority of their services are actually positive in nature. So they do marriage counseling.
Mm-hmm.
So like you don't have to have a domestic abuse situation to receive marriage counseling. You can
Mm-hmm.
legit go to family advocacy and get some marriage counseling. They also have programs like the New Parent Support Program. So if you're a brand new parent, first time having kids, they have classes to kind of help you with that engagement. My wife and I took it, and it paid huge dividends. We were still stressed out. Don't get me wrong, but we were a lot less stressed than what we would have been. They got dads 101. So for new dads, they got moms 101. They got breastfeeding classes. I mean, there are a ton of resources regarding like families and kids and relationships that
Mm-hmm.
the advocacy program offers that a lot of people forget about with that service. So I definitely wanted to remind everyone about that as well.
That's a great program. That's really great to know because I mean, um, for the longest time and for the majority of people that are childless or people that are single, not even thinking about children, um, the common mental trait for approaching that is that the moms get like maternity leave, they go to mom classes, and the dad kind of goes and supports her in these classes. So the fact that there is a legit class for the father of the children is a tremendous thing. Because I mean, before then, I probably would have been just like, I'm gonna call my dad, I'm gonna call my brother, and we're gonna find out the old school way of doing things, and just with like why reinvent the wheel? There's already things in place for you to help you out. Um, I know that recently one of my old airmen, he became a father, and he was getting paternity leave off of that. And I was like, really, you're getting leave? And he's like, yeah, I'm getting leave. I was just like, that's
All right.
awesome. Like I never would have known that was a thing.
Yeah,
So okay, that's great. I'm sure a lot of people are gonna find that to be, a revelation.
absolutely. Yeah. And then other than that, like I said, when it comes to suicide awareness, one of the main talking points I just want to emphasize is showing empathy, being there for one another, and taking care of yourself so
Mm-hmm.
that you can take care of other people. Another thing too, and I won't go too far into this because we could have hour-long conversation on this point, but kind of the social unrest in society right now, that's another huge stressor that we're seeing people having a hard time dealing with, both from a social aspect and a political aspect. A lot of people are questioning how they should say things, what they should say.
Mm-hmm.
Have I been disrespectful or racist in the past? I never thought I was racist, but have I been that? Have I been naive to
Mm-hmm.
what's going on? Can I speak up? Can I say something? Is it going to offend someone? Is it going to come off the wrong way? There are a lot of questions. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people don't know how to say things, what to say. Especially being in the military, there's kind of a unique towing of the line that we have to adhere to.
Mm-hmm.
We can let our opinions be known, but if it's anything within the political scope, we got to be careful with the chain of command and not downplaying certain figures. We have to be more cognizant than
Mm-hmm.
civilians are. So a lot of people have questions. What can I support? What can I say? What can I do? So just making sure that y'all. The best way to alleviate that is just have those conversations internally, like within your work sections. But when you do those, be open. You have to be open minded.
Mm-hmm.
Try and have an understanding of where people are coming from. Why they feel the way they do. Have an understanding of their background. Maybe they feel this way or have these thought processes because they have certain experiences that they've gone through. So
Mm-hmm.
really listening to one another, and try to have an understanding of where we're coming from, where other individuals are coming from. That can go a huge way in kind of reducing some of that anxiety with all the societal stressors and political stressors going on
Yeah,
right now.
that's a really great point. Like my unit has had an internal conversation on that, and oftentimes what you find out whenever you delve into conversations like this is you find out things about individuals that you weren't privy to, information that you weren't privy to before. So
Yeah.
you find out a little bit more about like people that you thought you knew. Well, it turns out you didn't really know that they had gone through this or that kind of situation. So, just like you said, something that to keep in the forefront of your mind at all times during conversations like that or conversations around something like that
Yeah.
is to just listen. Do not react emotionally. Do your best to keep your emotions in check and just know that people have a different experience than you do. That doesn't make them any better or any worse than you. It just means that they have a different experience. They have a different point of view due to their own personal lives, and it's important to accept them as that first. You know, if they had something negative happen to them in their life and it spawned a certain way of thinking, be like, okay, I accept that that's your life, that that's your experience. Um, However, these are the things about that have affected me in my life, and I just want them present them to you. That way, you can take that information and do with it what you will. If it allows that person to become more sensitive to the fact of different life experiences, then great. Hopefully, no matter what, a conversation like that will induce a growth in that person that
Absolutely.
they didn't have before. Because Lord knows that my lifestyle or my upbringing had a very nuanced approach into life in general. And it wasn't until I got into the military and started visiting other places in the world and visiting other countries that I realized that, like, you know what, I was very fortunate to grow up in the place that I did, around the people that I did, under the parents that I had. And it's allowed me to have this perspective and, um, this certain level of privileges. Many people wouldn't consider me to be privileged, and other people would consider me to be privileged. Growing up, privilege was not a positive word. But the older that I grew up was just like, having a mom and a dad, having two parents that were still married. That was a privilege. Personally, I just thought it was like, okay, that was just life choices by my parents, which led to me having this privilege. I didn't do nothing to have that, but just knowing that that sets me um, at a different starting point than other people, that I should be sensitive to people that don't have that and not necessarily give them a handout or, anything like that, but definitely encourage that person's self-development. So, I mean, you can't change what people have in their heart. You can only allow them to change that themselves. So having conversations like that in the unit goes a very long way for everybody in the unit. The only problem is, or not the only problem, but the challenge that most people will encounter was that there are people that believe that they are right no matter what. And
Right.
unfortunately, you just can't have those conversations with those people.
Yeah.
So you as a person, just keep an open mind, like you were saying. Listen more than anything, and just be prepared to have things that you never questioned before questioned. And as long as
Right.
you can approach a conversation with that in mind, I think you'll develop as a person. Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the exchange here on Wingman Wednesday. Just a quick reminder, if you hadn't subscribed to the channel, be sure to do so and like this video. Without further ado, back to the exchange.
With these discussions that are happening within units, they're great as long as they're facilitated in the right way. So
Mhm.
whenever we're having these discussions, what shouldn't happen is that the discussion is dominated by whoever's facilitating it. Because
Mhm.
what needs to happen is there needs to be input from the group. So if
Mhm.
you're having a group discussion, then it needs to be exactly that, a group discussion, and
Mhm.
not just one person talking and everyone else has to listen. It seems like common sense, but it happens a lot in group dynamics where one person is in charge of a group and then they just kind of take control of it. That's something that we train on in mental health all the time when we do group treatment sessions.
Mm-hmm.
It's how to facilitate a group, which is, keep everyone on track, but essentially the group running itself and facilitating the discussion within itself, and not us just going through all the information. It would be like our conversation that we're having right now, you just sitting there and me just talking about everything, saying, well, this is it, and this is it, and this is it,
Mm-hmm.
and not actually having a conversation. So just something to keep in mind as we go forward with all the units and all those small discussions, whether it's social discussions, political discussions, COVID discussions, whatever, to really make sure it's a discussion and not a lecture or a briefing.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right, Chuck. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, man. I know I took this, we kind of jumped into the conversation a little deeper than perhaps we both planned on doing, but I mean, it was definitely a great conversation. I always enjoy talking to you, talking to anybody from back in the day, seeing where you guys are going, what y'all are doing. That's one of the great things about the military is that you meet a variety of people, and you get to, if you're doing it right, you see them be successful. It makes you want to be more successful, and they'll turn around and help you become more successful. It's a big family, and as a wingman, you should take care of your wingman. You should look out for your wingman. You should be, happy whenever your wingman succeeds and be able to help them out when they don't reach their full potential. So I appreciate you taking the time, man. I'll let you know how all this goes. Anything else you want to say?
No, man. Thanks for having me. And definitely look forward to linking up in the future, man.
All right. Awesome, man. Tell your family hi for me. Well, guys, that wraps up this episode of Wingman Wednesday. If you have any tips or any ways that you deal with stress in the military, be sure to leave that down in the comments below. And if you're liking this new format that we have for the Xchange, be sure to tell us. Let us know what you think and what next topic we should discuss. I'm Bruce Uwaha asking you, hey, where's your wingman? Y'all take it easy.